That brings me to another initiative from the House that may very well die in the Senate, which has been the topic at the front of minds, I think, of many this week for the House Democratic Caucus, and that is the matter of impeachment. Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Jimmy Kimmel last night, once again, articulating her vision of why it doesn't make sense to begin a formal impeachment inquiry, why it makes sense to go slowly and carefully in her mind. You are a member of leadership. You are a chair of a committee, and you have come out, I believe this week, if I'm not mistaken, in favor of beginning a formal impeachment inquiry. What changed your mind? How'd you get there?
Well, very easy. I've been in my district for over a week. I've traveled to about 18 counties, over 700 miles. I've talked to a lot of people, and to the person, everybody said, what are you all going to do about President Trump? They sometimes call him another name, but clearly they are disappointed in his leadership. Some of them will even tell me, Chris, you know, I don't even want my children or grandchildren to watch the president on TV anymore. He doesn't set the standard as Americans that a president should. So I heard enough, and up until I came home this weekend, I had resisted moving forward. But, you know, I represent this district, and I listened to the people, and I heard them.
Congressman, I got to tell you, that is really interesting to me for this reason. Some of the conventional wisdom that I think has been communicated and I think is believed by many people in your caucus and in leadership is that impeachment is an esoteric concern, or it's an obsession of people that are political junkies, but not real people, you know, living their lives, that they're detached. But what you're telling me is that you went home to your district and talked to your actual constituents, and that's what changed your mind.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, it didn't matter whether I was in the hole in the wall or the finest restaurant in my district. People would come up and talk to me about this. And let me tell you, it bothers them that here we are, the greatest country in the world, being led by somebody who won't tell the truth. They are clearly upset that our values as Americans have been compromised by this president.
The final question for you, and I really do appreciate you taking time tonight. Do you anticipate, as everyone comes back, that conversations being different starting Monday because your colleagues have had perhaps similar experiences?
Well, you know, this is how things get done. People talk. People listen to constituents. I don't think it'll be any different when we get back on Monday. People will do that. I look forward to it. I'll be in a meeting with the speaker shortly when I get there, and I'm sure people will ask me how I arrived at a position. I'm happy to tell them. And again, since I've announced it, I've not had anything but compliments from people calling and say, I'm glad you're taking this stand.
All right, Congressman Benny Thompson of the great state of Mississippi, thank you so much for making time tonight.
Thank you.
For more on where this impeachment debate is headed next, I'm joined by MSNBC political analyst Michelle Goldberg, op-ed columnist for New York Times, and MSNBC contributor Nick Confessori, investigative reporter for The Times. That was fascinating.
Yes. It really was. I mean, I've heard the same thing from so many members of Congress, you know, who kind of are slow-walking impeachment or are skeptical of it. They say people in my district don't care, right? People, you know, we campaigned on prescription drug prices. We didn't campaign on obstruction of justice or impeachment. And that's always sounded pretty out of touch to me because, first of all, people out in the real world don't even know about all of these demonstration bills that you're passing.
Right, that's the irony, right?
Which are also not going anywhere in the
Right.
Senate. And so, you know, and I think you also saw this in the Justin Amash town hall, right? There are a huge number of people out there who are stupefied and terrified by what's going on in this country right now and are waiting for somebody to act.
You know, it's interesting. The second producer, Jessica Carey, and I were having a conversation about this topic, and she was making this case that people are going to come back having talked to their district and be in a different mindset. And then there was Benny Thompson, basically. I mean, honestly, it was like literally what she was saying in our second meeting today, and that was really remarkable to me because it is the inverse of the conventional wisdom. Real people don't care about this.
Well, the problem for Nancy Pelosi is that a big chunk of her party actually wants to begin these proceedings. The count now is at 50, I think, for Democrats in the House. It's going to go up, not down.
Yes.
And
no one's going to come. That number's not coming down. Right?
But what happened the last week was Bob Mueller short-circuited this whole thing. He basically said, guys, I wrote this report. I said you should consider obstruction of justice as the Constitution prescribes it with impeachment proceedings. He didn't say it directly. It was kind of alluded to. But so if you were in the base and you were saying this guy should be impeached, now Bob Mueller is out there saying, yeah, that's what I meant. You should consider impeachment. It's very hard for Nancy Pelosi to be saying, tap the brakes, tap the brakes.
Well, and you can watch leadership, particularly Pelosi, who I just want to say is an extremely shrewd politician who has been through a million more political battles than I have even witnessed or covered, and I am not suggesting my political, like I have no judgment on this one way or the other, just describing it, but you can watch her out there trying to hold on to the reins. I mean, it really does look like a caucus where you can see where the energy is going. You can see where the base, I think, increasingly is going to be at, and they are trying their best to hold the line.
But, I have to say, like you, I have a lot of admiration for Nancy Pelosi and don't presume to know more about how to hold a caucus together. But I will say that her arguments against impeachment are really unconvincing, and nobody's kind of put forward a more convincing version of that argument. Her argument that Donald Trump wants to be impeached and sort of baiting us to be impeached. He clearly would regard this as a terrible humiliation and, even seems to recoil at the word, right? And so the argument that impeachment is divisive, not impeaching Trump, but kind of allowing him to get away with crimes is also extremely divisive.
Right.
It's just divisive
in a different way.
Right, exactly. And so, and the idea that kind of impeachment will necessarily redound to Trump's benefit, again, there's just very little support for that idea out there.
You know what I think? I think the nearest analog in the Trump era to the impeachment fight is the Brett Kavanaugh fight. And that cuts a bunch of different ways. The Brett Kavanaugh fight absolutely solidified the right. It solidified the forces. The never-Trumpers and Trumpers got together to fight for Brett Kavanaugh. It energized both sides. It was a crushing defeat for the Democrats and liberals in the center left, and they were really crushed afterwards. But there was also in a sense in which the base was like, we don't care if you don't have the votes. You must fight. You must fight. That was the message. And Democrats went out and they fought. They really did fight to the last inch on that. And I think there's a similar dynamic.
The thing that was so fascinating about Brett Kavanaugh, too, is that they kind of said, oh, and this is really going to hurt Democrats in the midterms, right?
And it was 30 days before them as opposed to 18 months.
And there was just a complete misapprehension.
Absolutely.
I think the problem is that Democrats always think that the American people aren't with them even when they are, and Republicans vice versa. They always think that the American people support them because they define the American people as a very small slice of the electorate.
Pelosi is shrewd and experienced, and she won the House with a playbook, and she, has good reason to think it should work again.
Yes.
But what Justin Amash showed is that if you go out in a principled way and say, I believe this, I have no upside to doing this, but I think it's the right thing to do, there are people who respond to it. It's politics, it's leadership, and the question is that what would happen here? No one really knows what's going to happen. How it's going to play.
I got to say, the Amash data point to me is as interesting as any single one, because it's like I said the other day, it's quantitative data and qualitative data. That's very good qualitative data, right? Yeah. That's not public opinion. That's not broad, but that's deep. And look, all of us have covered moments in American life where conservatives showed up at town halls because they were apoplectic about what was happening and berated their members of Congress. And I half expected that might happen.
I expected that.
I thought we would see a Tea Party Obamacare style show of force. And it didn't.
And what was
that
so
says
interesting, too, is that the Republicans who did show up were sort of baffled.
Yes,
right?
they're more curious.
They had never encountered this argument before. They had no idea that the Mueller report didn't exonerate the president. And so to have that dramatized over months, nobody in this country should think that the Mueller report exonerated the president.
Michelle Goldberg and Nick Confessore of the New York Times, thank you both.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.